Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffat as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffat.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffat. I'm in Burrawang, New South Wales, in Australia. As you know, it's coming up to 10:30 in the morning here, Friday morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio in Boulder, Colorado. Is that right, Jeff? It's
Close.
Jeff
I'm
Gladnick.
in North Denver.
North Denver. I thought you were up marketing Boulder.
Nah, Boulder's nice. We almost moved there. We did live there, so you might have heard me say that when we first moved here for just a few weeks, but then we've been in Denver ever since.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and start the
That's okay.
intro
Yeah,
again.
we're right out of the gate. Go ahead.
At least we didn't get 5 minutes into it. That's all right. I'll go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffat. It is 10:30 in the morning, Friday morning, here in New South Wales in Australia. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio Jeff Gladnick, who is in North Denver in Colorado. Jeff, and it's Thursday night, 6:30 there. Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, David.
Yeah, great to chat with you. And we've been chatting for the last 20 minutes before hitting the record button. Now, Jeff, you were introduced to me personally only a month ago by a good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, Rita Zamora. But when she introduced us, in the email correspondence, you actually said that you had heard of me, which quite surprised me because I thought a lot of people haven't even heard of Australia from the US, so quite surprised. But you do business down here. That's the important thing. You have a company called Great Dental Websites, and you actually have 15% of your clients are in Australia. So tell me about Great Dental Websites. Tell me how you got business in Australia, and tell me why it's easy doing business in Australia.
So the company was founded, Great Dental Websites, in 2006. My dad and 8 other members of my family were dentists. I had a background in software engineering, and my dad needed a new website. And I was working at a startup in San Francisco, and I didn't have any time. And I was like, well, just get some quotes from people, and I'll help you pick one. And I just need to get this off my plate. And the quotes he got were just terrible. And I realized my dad was going to get ripped off. And I was like, all right, fine. You put me through college. I'll do this for you. And college in the US is very expensive. And so I owed him one. I made him a new website. While I was about halfway through working on it, my Uncle Joe found out about this. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. My Uncle Joe had invested in a previous company, and that $10,000 investment had gone to nothing. So I was like, you know what would be a great way to repay Uncle Joe? A free dental website. And then Uncle Dan and Aunt Kathy and Uncle Kevin and Aunt Judy, everybody got wind of this free website deal and wanted in. And so I decided, well, I'm not making all these websites. I'm just going to make a software platform for doing it. I just learned a technique it was called multi-tenant software development, where you make like one bit of software that many different customers use. I'm like, well, I've been wanting to play with this a little bit professionally, and I'd learned it. So I was like, I can apply this for a dental website. That's the simplest thing ever. I'll be done in 6 months. Now, this is 2006. So before I know it, they started referring their friends and colleagues. And by the time I launched the thing, about 8-9 months later, I probably had like 20 customers that were paying me a little bit of money. I didn't charge my dad, but everybody else I charged like a little bit. And the referrals I charged, whatever the price was, I charged back then. And that kind of carried on as a side business for another like 4 or 5 years, until I got like 4 calls one day while I was in an engineering meeting at work. And I was like, and I couldn't take any of them. I was working. But then I started to think, like, I wonder if I could do this full time, because I wanted to get back to running a business again. And I kind of did the math and figured if we could, reduce our costs. We've moved out of San Francisco, decided to have a baby that was going the opposite direction for costs. But I had 9 months to figure that out. And then we moved to Denver. And that was when the company kind of really started. And now we have, I guess, like 35, 36 full-time employees, 3 in Australia, the rest back here in the US, mostly in Denver, and almost 1,000 customers, about 150 down in the land down under. It's been great. I love coming down to Australia. I've been going down there since 2016. I'm threatening to move there all the time. I love the beaches, love the weather. I think I'm there in like the spring and fall when it's like perfect. So I'm probably naive, but I've always enjoyed the people and the food. So it's kind of my second home. I probably spent about a month of my life down there. I really enjoy it.
Well, it's great to have you come visit. Any visitor from the US is good for our economy, and of course you're probably getting things a lot cheaper down here than if you're buying Australian goods over there at the moment,
Oh
because there
yeah.
might be a few tariffs on our
Yeah.
goods, but that's
Well, yeah,
another
that
topic
changes
for
day
another.
to day. You never know what the tariff will be. You wake up in the morning and 100%, oh, somebody. The next day, it's gone. So you never know.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you uprooted your family from San Francisco and moved to Colorado. Now you told me that one of the reasons you like coming to Australia is you enjoy surfing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you get your surfing fix when you're in Colorado?
Don't. I mean, there is actually pretty good river surfing here. Apparently, I've never done that, but we'll go on vacation a few times a year to the beach on the East Coast to see my family, and we're going to Hawaii after Christmas this year. So I usually get to go a few more times in the U.S., but the beaches in Australia are just so much better. There's the lifeguard situation is incredible. Everything's really clean. It feels very safe. There's a lot of like anti-shark stuff, which I don't know if it works, but it makes me feel good. I feel like it works. So I like surfing in Australia better than the US.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned sharks, because you mentioned in your intro that you felt that the original quotes that your father had got to build a website, that he was going to be ripped off.
Yeah, they were
Why?
like 3 to 4 times the prices we charge today. I mean, they were just insane and giving him all kinds of crap he didn't need. And it's the classic story of how a business is. I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so I was like, why can't I just do this myself? And then the other question, so that was the main motivation, was just to save him money. The way I got down to Australia was I did like an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, and I answered a bunch of questions about the business. So I think it was like in a startup, like how I built a SaaS business or slash agency. And this guy from Adelaide reached out to me. He's like, you should do this down here in Australia. We don't have anything like that. And I was like, no, you guys have big buildings. It's a proper first world country. I'm sure there's like 20 competitors like us. And he just refuted everything in my email point by point with like data and links. And I was like, I still kind of wrote him off. I'm like, no, you don't quite understand the industry. I know it looks like that, but that's not quite the same. And then he refuted that email with data. And I'm like, okay, this guy's got me wrong twice. I should really meet with him. And he was right. There really weren't a lot of mature marketing companies down there. There are a couple, and we need to feel like an entry point, because we're Yanks from abroad. We don't know the local rules, and we were just hearing about what opera was for the first time, and like all the regulations around marketing for dentistry. We had a little exposure to this from Canada, but Australia had its own rules, and so we really felt like we needed a partner. And he offered to do this on commission and find us, like a channel partner, an initial channel partner to go with. And we ended up working with Prime Practice, which was a great partnership and still is. And that was how we got our first customers. And they provided a lot of like professional support and rent, legal support, HR support, and like a lot of everything that we kind of needed to get ourselves set up. They helped us out with. And so it was a good partnership. He was wanting to work on commission. We wrote him a big check. Everybody was happy. And I still keep in touch with him from time to time.
Oh, good. Well, it's nice to get a foot in the door and an arm around your shoulder at the same time, in terms of getting to where you want to go and what you can do. What are the biggest challenges you see in working, because you're working with individual practices all the time, and
Yeah.
every practice, I don't like to broad brush that someone is a typical dentist or a typical electrician, because that's just what they do for a living. My wife used to say about my son when he was small that he's not a naughty boy, he just does naughty things. And so I say that about dentists. They're not Dentist is not a type of person. It's just what people do for a living. And in fact, a friend of mine in Staten Island says, yeah, he's actually in the sales and marketing business. Dentistry is just his vehicle. So tell me about working with individual dentists who typecast themselves. I know they are C-type people and very technical.
I would say the biggest challenge we have with dentists, it's either that it's probably one of two things. It's they're too busy to do like the homework that we're trying to like coach them to do. Because we'll work with the clients for marketing projects and coach them kind of just on that, not sort of the all encompassing stuff that you're doing with them, but just really focused on marketing. And so we'll tell them like, you want more Invisalign cases, but we don't have any before and after cases. We'd love a video of you explaining like, here's the difference between Invisalign and traditional orthodontics. It's hard to do patient testimonial videos in Australia. They can really just say that they like you and you're nice and the office was clean. But if we have one of those, and that'd be great too. And then kind of the content to fill out like a landing page. And so either the dentists are just too busy, they just keep putting it off, or most of the time they're perfectionists and they're like, this case, I'm just not totally happy with the way that this bite worked out. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this looks great. What are we upset about? Like, well, I think next time I can get it perfect. We don't need perfect. These teeth were incredibly jacked up and now they look great. And you've done fantastic work here. Like, oh, and then they hem and they haw and they want to delay and make it perfect. It's like, guys, we'll just put what we have out there now. If you get a better one, we'll just replace it. We're not etching this in stone. This is the web. This is, super easy to make changes. This is the great part about it. And so getting them on board to do that kind of stuff is a challenge. Sometimes getting clients to wait. It's like if you plant corn, as I have in my backyard, it takes a while before you can start eating. And you can look at the corn after a few weeks and be all pissed off, like, where's the corn? Even a couple months, where's the corn? But it takes a while for the corn to grow. Like certain marketing services take a little time to get going too, especially SEO. And we really, really try at like multiple points during the sales process, the onboarding process, and the coaching process to remind the client, like, this is at least like a 3 to 6 month project, and usually 6 to 12 if it's in a really competitive market. And sometimes we still get comments from clients like, it's day one, my site launched an hour ago. Why am I not at the top of Google? We haven't heard anything we've said. We just kind of remind them politely again. So those are probably clients and I understand why they're impatient. Sometimes they're spending a lot of money for them and they need patience, and sometimes it's a startup and they really need patience. They have all these fixed costs that aren't getting met. You have to kind of like be prepared. We don't have contracts, so it's not like they're stuck, but we tell people you should mentally commit to this because this is what it's going to take. If you decide you lost faith in us, you can walk away, but mentally you should be committing to this because this is what we're telling you. That's how long it takes to grow corn.
Yeah, that's true. The best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. But
right now, yeah.
And the one that you plant today is not going to look like an oak tree for another 20 years.
Exactly, yeah.
Dentists can be very impatient at getting results. They also can be very, here I go categorizing them, in groups. They can be very analytical of each other, sometimes not caring whether they insult somebody about what that person seems to think is good work and what the patient may even think is good work.
I see that in every profession. I mean, software engineers say the same thing. Oh, that framework sucks. You're using that database, whatever. Every profession has its opinions and, jerks and just professional differences, and that's fine.
We had a big software company down here just lay off 150 people via a video via email.
Well, were they remote employees?
Well, they were remote employees, some of them, yeah.
Well,
but still,
I don't know. I guess if you want to work as a remote employee, you get fired as a remote employee. That's not the way that I would do it if I had a choice. I remember during COVID, we had to lay off I think 6 or 7 people, and because of COVID, we had to lay them off via video. That was like really early in. Everybody, we were like Lysoling groceries and stuff at that point. But that always sucks. I know, hopefully, the company cared, but we tried to hire back as many as we could. And we did hire back, I think like 3 of those employees. The other ones had already moved on or gotten new jobs. But that's always a hard thing to do. And I guess the only solace is you didn't have to drive all the way in just to be politely told you have to leave again immediately. That would suck.
Well, it was in fact a video. It wasn't actually via video call. It was actually a video that came via email to them. So that was a bit,
No, you can watch it on your own time, I guess. You don't, you're not under pressure. I guess if you wait too
oh,
long, your email won't work anymore.
every
But
black cloud has a silver lining there, Jeff.
I remember I was let go of a project once, and they said it was for money. I wasn't a cheap employee on that project, and it had run over budget. But I remember I was very annoyed because I had written like a goodbye letter to everybody, and it wasn't like slamming management or anything. I was like, hey, it's my last day. Just wanted to say thanks for working. Everybody enjoyed it. Here's how to get a hold of me if you want to keep in touch. And then I pressed send and it wouldn't go through. I already had my access cut off. And I get it though. Like, you never know what somebody's going to do and how some people take it. I just feel like the lawyers have like kind of forced all this kind of stuff on us because every time we've had like negative experiences with like, employees where they lied or did something where they required termination and like it was bad, there's always a lesson that you hear from the employment attorney, like, oh, if you had this policy in place, like we told you, this wouldn't happen. And then slowly but surely, the workplace gets a little bit more corporate and, nobody's happy, but this is the world we live in.
Yeah, sadly, it is the world we live in. And even getting way off topic here, even in dental offices, one of my clients just said that they had an employee leave about 3 or 4 weeks ago, resigned after being there for a year, and then all of a sudden sent a message to the dentist and said, any chance there's any jobs? I've made a mistake in leaving. And
that's always nice to get that though. That, that's a sign that you're running a good practice. The grass wasn't greener. We've gotten those calls from employees many times that they're very unhappy at their new job and it's not what they thought it would be and the money's not worth it. So I feel like that client should feel very proud of that. And even if they decided not to hire them back, like know that, don't, it's always hard not to take it personally when somebody quits. Like that old saying of, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their boss. And I can still think of some employees leaving where I'm like, boy, I really messed that up. I could have been a better manager. And we could have done some things to accommodate them. And sometimes some of those employees I'm still friends with, I'll tell them that and they're like, no, I was ready for something new. But you tell yourself that and you beat yourself up. So it's always a nice sign when that happens, I think.
yeah, it's a difficult decision for the employer because there's the fear that they're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And but it is nice, but often too, and it's like the patient that leaves. They go, oh, I'm going to another dentist, and then they find that the next dentist not as good as their first dentist, but they're too ashamed to go back to their previous dentist. So
yeah, we try to do this with customers. I wonder if you've had this experience too. But when we do lose a customer, we try to let them go in the most or help them go, I guess I should say, in the most professional way we can, and invite them back. We check back after 6 months. Tom, we'd love to have them back. And we always tell them it's a celebration when a customer returns, like the prodigal son. And we do have customers come back, and that's kind of very similar. It's the same thing. Do you have that experience in your consulting business?
yeah, I do. For whatever reason, they leave, and then they find that it's still grass. It's not any greener, and they still have to mow it. And so they still have to do the work. And you've probably seen the thing, if at first you don't succeed, why not do what your coach told you to do in the first place, which is usually the reason. Yes. And the other thing is that they often leave because they talk to their friends and they say, well, we don't have to do that at our practice, but their practice isn't being coached. And so their practice isn't getting results. What horrifies me, Jeff, and now we're talking about me, what horrifies me is when I see practices for sale where the dentist has been there for 30, 40 years, just retiring, and his turnover is $750,000 a year. And I'm thinking, I was doing more than that in 1998. So what's that guy been doing for 25 years, for the last 25 years?
Just coasting. Yeah, that's all right.
Coasting. And so there's opportunity there for somebody to buy that practice because there's probably a lot of incomplete dentistry in that filing cabinet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they probably aren't marketing it well. I mean, we have a similar thing where, a client will leave. They'll be like, well, my buddy told me his marketing company will do it for like $200. And you're like, well, how many hours are they doing this for? Because these are slave wages and good luck, I guess. Or sometimes, the buddy is in like extremely fortunate demographics where like they're the only dentist in town. And it's like, demographics is a great way to run a practice, especially in the US. Like there's a lot of rural practices that are killing it, that do very little marketing, that do very little anything, just because they're the only thing around for like 50 miles. And so that's great. If you're willing to live in a rural area, it's a great business, but you can't necessarily apply somebody else's situation to your own. Although it's helpful to talk to many different dentists and just assume it's going to work exactly the same for you. It might not.
Yeah, there's there's people here because I live in a rural area, and my dentist, who's just retired, tells me of people who drive an hour, which is 100 kilometres, 60
Yeah.
miles to come to him from another town because there's no decent dentists in that town. In fact, I used to have a patient. He would be coming to my part of Sydney to get his Mercedes serviced, and he lived 5 hours drive away. He said, "There's no decent dentist in my town where I am, so I just come down when something to do while I'm waiting for my car to be serviced."
There's a phenomenon that we've seen that phenomenon before, and we've helped clients kind of figure it out. Because we had a client in Louisiana who's a pretty prominently known like speaker on the speaking circuit up here, who talks about implants a lot. And he gave us a list of like every single implant case he'd done for like the past couple of years. And he's like, he told me exactly on a map. He showed me. He like helped me like draw a box around. He's like, "Jeff, this is where my patients come from, and then like right here." And I'm like, "Hey, we'll see." And so he was mostly right, but there were a couple pockets in like that were a little further away that he wasn't counting on, and then all along this like one corridor. And the corridor was a highway running through the bayou in Louisiana, and it's like he's the best guy who does implants. This is a big deal. So people are just driving all the way along this highway. And like once you figure stuff like that out, you're like, "Oh boy, I bet that it's pretty cheap to buy clicks all the way in the bayou." And it was. And so there's usually like ways that you can win if you can take a look at your customers, and it's not that hard to do. If you can plot them in like an Excel sheet or a CSV file, Google Maps will let you upload them, the addresses, and then you can see on a map like a real good visual representation of where all these patients are for different services. You can put them on different layers and turn them on and off. And, you can see like, for the general dentistry, maybe they're coming from lower socioeconomic areas, but the higher end cases are coming from different places. And that's very useful if you're trying to run a pay-per-click campaign where, you're trying to make every dollar count and you want to really micro target. It tells you where the pockets are that are working, and then you can double down on those areas or go right adjacent to them. And that works very well. It's something that everybody running paid search campaigns should be doing.
Yeah, it sounds like an old Dan Kennedy principle that you find out where your customers are coming from and you spend more money marketing in that area because there's a similar demographic there, rather than go to a new area because, I'm missing out over here. There must be people here that don't know me, and
Well,
but
there's
concentrate
also
on the area.
network. Yeah. And there's also network effects. If you keep marketing, or even if you're sending direct mail to places where your patients already are, chances are your neighbor might bump into somebody that knows them or be aware that somebody goes to that dentist. They might ask. And so sometimes you start to see these things going on. Schools are another great target where for 1 hour each day, there's just a flood of moms. And in this country, at least, I keep reading study after study that moms make up 92% of the healthcare decisions. And so if you can advertise to a mom who's just sitting in their car, looking at their phone, waiting for the kids to come out, and you can do a sponsorship with the school, which is a great backdoor way to buy some juice on Google, because Google will not let you buy links. It's against their terms of service. But if you happen to sponsor a school, like parent-teacher association, they usually give you a link on their website, which is like a .gov, which is very authoritative to Google, back to yours. And then you have a banner at pickup. You get something in the newsletter. There's something on the baseball field or the cricket field. I don't know what you guys have for, you probably don't have a baseball field in Australia. Then so people are, seeing this reinforcement, and then you can run ads in a little box around the school for 1 hour in the morning and the afternoon each day, and you're just hitting them from like 3 or 4 different spots, and it becomes very economical to do that.
So what you're talking about geofencing there, is that correct?
That's the term. That is exactly correct.
There you go. Yeah, I've heard of that.
So you enter the fenced-in area, you see an ad, and then you send it to everybody. We don't even have to do targeting. We're just doing it based on your location. When you leave it, you stop seeing the ad.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I'm noticing with my phone at the moment, I had a conversation with my wife about pizza ovens, and all of a sudden I'm getting ads for pizza ovens appear on my social media. How's that work?
I hear this anecdotally all the time. I know that like retargeting is heavily used by e-commerce. When they say they're not listening to the microphone. There might be an app on there that's not. Maybe they're lying. Who knows? But the way that generally retargeting work will be like, you click on an ad for a coat, and then you just start seeing coats everywhere. We do the same thing with retargeting for dental practices, where somebody goes to your site and clicks on like the Invisalign ad, we just start showing ads for Invisalign everywhere, and you'll see it on the New York Times. Sometimes the patients are like really impressed, like, "Wow, you're advertising in the New York Times," and you're like, "No, it's just like $2 a click. It's just it's just everywhere." And so they're just kind of these retargeting channels that are showing people whatever they visited previously. That also is a very economical way to do it, because sometimes the patient, is they're at work or they're busy or they're on their phone in the car, and then the light changes, they drop the phone, they keep going, and then they forget about it. And so this is a great way to remind them for pennies on the dollar. That's a great way to do it. I do remember, like, Facebook targeting, they won't let you do this anymore, but I remember reading about some guy who wanted to play a joke on his roommate, and he uploaded like a custom audience, and it was like a minimum size, like 10 or something back then. And there was 9 women and just him. And so he targeted everything to males and then ran these very specific advertising campaigns to his roommate. It's like, do you keep leaving the dishes out and your roommate's pissed at you? Well, you need this product or whatever. And then the guy's like, oh, that's freaking uncanny. And then it's like, and then it like, are you late coming home and you forgot to pick up the pizza? Well, call Domino's. He's like, it's unbelievable. How did they know I forgot to get the pizza? You can never find your your purple Air Jordans. Why don't you put an air tag in them? And the guy's like, how did they know I have purple Air Jordans? Like, that's very specific. And he was like getting real paranoid about it. And the final one was like, do you think that we're listening to you? Maybe you need like some pharmaceutical to like make the voices stop or something. And he's like, this is too much. And then the guy finally told him. So maybe you could be the victim of an elaborate prank too. I wouldn't rule that. It's not me.
It's more. It's not. I know it's not you. I don't. Well, it could be some. There's only 2 people in our house, and it's not me. So maybe something happening there. Jeff, back to dentistry. You just mentioned the word Invisalign, which is kind of like the word Xerox, kind of like the word biro. The first in, it becomes the brand name associated with the product. How is the marketing for Invisalign? I've even had people say to me that because their patients are asking for Invisalign, they don't want to even entertain another aligner system, which might be more economical or might be even better because it's not Invisalign. Is that the case in the US?
That's a good question. I'd have to talk to somebody on the accounts team. I know, I feel like there's a lot more of our patient or our clients, I should say, market Invisalign. We do have a lot of people doing like clear liners and 6-month smiles and some other brands. 6-month smiles is basically the same thing.
No, 6-month smiles is braces for 6 months.
Oh, yeah, okay, So it's kind of it's a similar problem, but different delivery. I mean, clear aligners is starting to be a little bit better known, but the traffic for Invisalign, and we could probably look it up real quick, but the traffic for Invisalign, I bet, is way higher. Traffic estimator comparison tool on Google. Where is it? Google search. I bet it's like I'm not going to log in right now. I've logged out of everything, so I'm not distracted. But I bet you the Invisalign is like 10 to 1. And yeah, you're right. People call it Kleenex. They call it Googling, and they call it Xeroxing. Now people say copy, but there's still some brand awareness from that. And I know they're very protective of their trademark, so you can't just call something else Invisalign. I don't think they have exclusivity, though. Advertise Invisalign and also have alternatives, or does
you
Invisalign
can do that, yeah.
Yeah, so that might be an option for a dental practice if you want to provide patients with a different service, or maybe one that's less expensive. Maybe it's not as good, maybe it's just as good, but that's kind of getting the best of both worlds.
In terms of a startup practice, are you finding that the best market for them is just general dentistry, or are you finding there's startups and they're going straight for the high-end stuff?
Well, it depends on how old they are, how experienced they are. Everybody wants the big case, full mouth reconstruction stuff, but some people are not ready for that yet, and they know that, and they know they need more training. I mean, a lot of people want to do fee for service. Sometimes that's really hard in saturated areas, especially if you're new. Sometimes it's a better option to go insurance or go rural. The startups are always more challenging because you got to spend a lot more on marketing, because you open with no patients and all these fixed costs of the building and staff and other stuff. And we do have clients that have grown incrementally, and those are some of my proudest cases. Like was one guy, Dr. Fako, a pediatric dentist in Illinois. He started out, I think, with us, and he was only open like 1.5 days a week, and he worked at another practice like in the next town over or something the other 3.5 days a week. And then he went to 2, then he went to 3, then full time. And I think he used a combination of SEO, but he really was hard on like paid search. And that kind of works well because if you're a startup and you're doing SEO out of the gate, it can still work and it's still a good long-term strategy. But you got to understand that you're paying for marketing that's going on 7 days a week and you're not open 7 days a week if you're in that situation. In those cases, paid search would work a lot better. We would just run the ads like the evening before he was open. So he'd come in and maybe get a couple inquiries and then the whole day he was open and then like, almost up until he closed that next half day. And we just would slowly expand it. But that was more or less how he told me later that was one of the biggest contributing factors to how he was able to leave the other practice, just slowly scaling up paid search. It happened to work very well for his area. So that's another option for you if you're looking at a startup is don't go all in right away. Start out as a part-time startup and gradually ramp it up. And I think that might help you. Especially if you can find another practice that's closed on the day you want to start it. You might be able to build your practice out of somebody else's and rent it for just 1 day a week. I know we've had clients do that too. That does become a hassle when you have to move, but then you don't have to build something out. You can always do that later. I've always been a fan of the lean startup approach to everything. So my mind always goes to like, minimum viable product and lowest cost of entry to test something.
It does make sense to not dive in all up. And I guess you've also seen businesses, though you're exclusively dental, but I
Mostly,
can
that's like
remember.
98% true. But yeah, we have a couple side projects we've done for people who are like, hey, could you do our dental attorney? And we have some dental CPAs in there. And like, actually, I have probably like a dozen mental health therapists. My wife is a mental health therapist, so I have to help her. Don't charge her. That'd be too complicated. Yes, but 98% of our business is dentists, and that's all we think about. That's what I'm in the shower, or get a bolt of light, an idea in the middle of the night. Like it's always about dentistry because that's where we live all day.
Oh, wow. Tell me, in the dental practice space again, with the things that you're seeing, in those dental offices, what's the biggest thing that's holding dentists back in terms of, you do the marketing, you get the inquiries coming, but they're not even converting the inquiries, let alone converting the people who actually turn up into having
Well,
treatment. What are the things that hold dentists back in those
so,
sort of
you think
situations?
about like a funnel of like the click and then they get to the website and then they convert them into a form fill or a call. And so then there's a couple places where it goes wrong. So the first thing that fails to happen is if they leave a message or it's a form fill, the front desk has got to call back right away. And so even having like an automated like text message thing to just like get the patient engaged is a useful tool if you're really busy and there are gaps. Interesting AI products now, they can help automate that and kind of get them directed towards scheduling and stuff like that, which you should really consider if your practice can't respond ASAP. I remember the CEO of a large online booking company told me that their data showed, and he could prove it because he could see it across multiple practices. Like in some cases, they had like every dentist in a city that their sales reps did a really good job. And he said that on average, every time somebody filled out a contact form at a dental site or made an online booking, they would do it again for another 1.5 dentists. So if you got an online booking appointment, it's a brand new patient, they might actually not actually be coming. You really need to follow up with that person, call them, make sure they get the forms, make sure that they feel kind of a connection to you and that you've answered all their questions and they feel comfortable. They didn't just like book a couple appointments just to cancel the one that's least convenient for them later, because that happens quite a lot. And then the second thing is if the front desk can get them on the phone, sometimes the front desk is really bad at converting. I hear this all the time from patients. And the first thing we'll do is listen to phone calls. And sometimes you see a lot of missed calls in the middle of the day, or you see a whole bunch of missed calls from 12 to 1. And you're like, did you know that's your busiest time? You're like, why can we stagger the lunch breaks? It's like, well, the girls like to go to lunch. It's like, not anymore because they're missing all these calls. So somebody's got to take one for the team and, bring a cell phone with them or stay at work and answer these calls because that's usually the busiest day. And even like Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, those can be busy days too. And I think like cumulatively the weekends will add up. I think the last time I ran a study on this, I think it was like 35 or 40% of all calls to the dental practices that we tested were outside of normal business hours. 35%. And so it's like, what does your front desk convert if they get them on the phone? Those are so many patients you're losing every month. And so you really should be aware of that. If you have a VoIP phone system, it should be really easy to tell who's calling and not hanging up and not leaving messages. So that's usually the first problem. Then it's the front desk may not be converting as well as they could. And they may be really nice, they may be informative, but they're not like pushing the patient to schedule an appointment. They're not inviting them to schedule an appointment. And I'm sure that you work with, coaching front desk staff on this all the time, but you have a lot of people who are just like, yeah, that's it. And then the patient's like, kind of doesn't know what to do. Like, okay. And they're like, yep. Okay, bye. All right, bye. And like that's it. That's how it ends. And I've heard, and that's not treasonous. I mean, I've heard worse calls where we had one practice that told us this, and we listened to one of the calls, and the front desk picked up, and they're like, yeah. And the person's like, hello? And they're like, yeah, hello. And they're like, is this, blank smiles? And they're like, yeah. What do you need? And they're like, oh, I just wanted to schedule an appointment. They're like, okay, what's wrong? And they're like, well, and they start telling them their problem. And they're like, okay, well, I guess, we're booked this week, maybe next Thursday. And they're like, I'll call you back. And they're like, whatever. And it was like the call from hell. I remember I used to play that at meetings just to shock people, but that kind of stuff's very common. And then the last thing, which unfortunately is very frequent, is the dentist themselves. The dentist usually doesn't want to feel like a used car salesman, but you don't have to be a used car salesman to convert people. It's just usually, in my opinion, just educating people and explaining what them, and you do have to encourage them to book and, invite them and tell them it's okay. Some dentists will assume that people can't afford treatment, and they'll just, tell them, like, just, I'm not even going to bring that up to the guy because it's too expensive for them. I've seen their car, but some people just don't care about cars. The dean of our electrical engineering college drove like the crappiest old car, and it was really impeccably maintained, but it was like this 20-year-old like Buick or something. And I remember like mentioning that to somebody, and like, oh, you should see his house. He liked his house better. He didn't really care how he got from home to his office, but as soon as he came home, he had a castle. And so, you might look at that guy and, think he's broke, but he's not. He's doing great. He's got a great dental plan from the university. So that's usually the stages where this can break down. And then financing is probably the last one, like at least in the US. I know the Australian insurance is slightly different, but in the US, you'll have you might be out of network, but that doesn't mean the patients would get zero benefit from their insurance coming to you. And sometimes, you can work with them on that. Or if they're fee for service and they're paying cash, maybe you give them a discount instead of you having to work with their insurance. Some dentists have membership plans, which have become popular, or they have financing that's available. And so you got to bring up all these different options to people. Because you can't just be like, oh, the price is 10 grand and like there's no other way. That's not always the case. So those are typically the parts of where this can go wrong in the funnel. And you probably can tell me a few more inside the practice.
The numbers are quite scary, and they consistently are, Jeff. That 2 out of 5 phone calls don't even get answered at the dental practice.
Well, that fits with my 35 to 40%.
Yeah, they default straight to the answering machine will get it, and the receptionist might be dealing with a patient, and they say, well, I've got to deal with this patient in front of me, so it's rude for me to leave them to just answer the phone, even if it's just to answer the phone and say, do you mind if I call you back in 10 minutes? They default, I won't do that. Trouble is that sometimes, a lot of the time, they're not actually in a face-to-face negotiation with a patient about treatment. They might be discussing something that has caused this discussion to occur, that is poor treatment by the dentist or, poor customer service. So they're fixing a problem instead of trying to create. So we find this chain, but getting back to the 60% that actually do get answered, only one of those 3 in 5, so 3 in 5 get answered, 2 in 5 don't. Only one of the 3 in 5 makes an appointment. So it's really a 20%. Every time the phone rings, only 20% actually get into the book. And that's scary. And of course, then that patient may be threatened by saying, well, we don't have anything for 5 weeks. I heard this one once. Somebody rang up and said, I'd like to see your doctor. I need 5 implants. I don't want to go to the doctor I've just seen. I've been recommended to go and see your doctor. And the receptionist goes, haven't got anything for 8 weeks. click. It's like, what did that guy just say? What did that lady just say? She said, I've got $25,000 in my bank account. I want to put it into your boss's bank account. When can I come and see him?
Yeah, you can't.
You
That's
can't,
brutal.
not
So
for
what
5 weeks.
would you tell them to do? Just assure them that we can get you in as little as 5 weeks, and hey, people cancel, we'll call you back right away. Pretty good odds of doing that, and stay on top of them. Or what would you say to that receptionist?
Well, every dentist needs to know how many new patient inquiries they get every day, and whether those inquiries are new patient checkup or new patient emergency relief of pain or broken tooth. You need to know your stats, and then you create the space for those calls based on how many per week are we going to get. And you've got to hold those spaces. In my office, we held those spaces every morning. When I walked in, there was 2 open spaces in the book every day, one at 11:30, one at 2:00. And that was for the 2 times that we knew that somebody was going to ring and need an appointment. And we'd even get a call the day before and say, I need an appointment. We say, look, I may have something come up tomorrow, but I won't know till 8:00 in the morning. Is that okay? They go, yeah, that's okay. Because we don't want to put somebody in there for a minor procedure that's not painful when all of a sudden somebody rings up and it's a big procedure that is painful. So that's more a hero thing. So you've got to be able to manage that sort of stuff as well. So I was not a same-day dentistry dentist. If I saw something, the last thing I wanted my patient to think was, he said he could do that. Now, he probably just found that so he could fill some space that he had. I always felt that that's what they
would. That a lot.
Yeah. And so we would say, I might have something come up tomorrow. We knew there was a space there for tomorrow, but I won't know till 8:00 tomorrow morning, if that's okay, if I can get you in tomorrow afternoon. They go, that's okay. So we always made it, we didn't want to look like we were, trying to fill spaces that were there. And even if there was a space there.
So how often did those spaces go unfilled?
Never.
Never.
So here's how you know,
okay.
Here's how they never go unfilled. Most dental practices, when they do a crown, when do they get the patient in? The day that the crown comes back. So what do we do? Our lab was a 2-week turnaround for our crowns. Every patient had an appointment scheduled for 3 weeks from their prep appointment. And we say, look, if this crown comes back earlier, is it okay if we call you and bring you in earlier? They go, oh yeah, that'll be fine.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah. So you always had a stack of people who had already agreed to come in earlier. Makes sense.
Hey, Betty, Dr. Moffat said if that crown came in earlier, he was going to call you. Guess what? It came in earlier.
Yeah.
We've got a spot today.
When you believe, 1 week earlier.
Well, I'm full of
that
coincidence.
Makes total sense. Yeah, that's brilliant. Look, the only other country we have an office in has great surfing. What are the odds?
Well, there's got to be a benefit to you for jumping on a plane for that long. And you're a lot younger than me, Jeff.
Well, yeah, I'm 40, almost 45 now. Yeah, I'm halfway to the end. So
Anyway, Jeff, it's been great chatting with you, and thanks for sharing the story about your business and how you've grown it into a very successful enterprise that covers both the northern and southern hemisphere. And we're glad that you come down here, and you've certainly fell into a relationship with Prime Practice. They are, the practice consulting company that every other practice consultant looks up to. Thanks to
good to hear that.
The work that Philip did down there.
Yeah, Philip's great.
Yeah, he is. All right. Well, Jeff Gladnick, thank you again for being a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Can you tell me quickly, for the show notes, what's the best way for dentists in Australia or in America or in the UK to get in touch with you?
So just go to greatdental.com, greatdental.com.au if you're down under. If you're in the UK, just go to greatdental.com. We do have one client out in the UK and another in Ireland. So that market's not totally foreign to us. We'd love to add some more. So we're still happy to work with Brits. But yeah, otherwise we have a dedicated site for Australia just because we have so many customers down there. We have our office in Sydney. You can just call them. There's a number on the website. You can reach me at jeff@greatdental.com, JEFF. And I'm happy to hear from you and answer questions. Company's big enough that, it'll be fine if something happens to me, if I get hit by a bus. But it's not big enough that I still can't talk to clients and still enjoy doing it. So feel free to reach out if you have a question for me.
Well, lovely to talk to you, and you'll be down in October, so I look forward to catching up with you for lunch when you come down.
Yeah,
so
October.
Thanks very much.
1st through the 28th, I'll be down there. So if you want to have lunch, please let me know.
We'll do it.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.